I want to welcome all of our viewers that I hope view this tape tomorrow, next week, next year, 25 years, and the next 100 years. I had just asked what the date is, and I forgot all what it was, but I'm going to tell you this is December the 5th? 4th. 1991. See how many mistakes I make? And what we have on for this afternoon, we're taping this in the council chambers in the city of Oldsmar. We are going to tape for our ancestors and for our kids and our kids' kids the living history of the city of Oldsmar. And I want to thank everyone here that is going to participate this afternoon in this. Because whatever you contribute to this tape will be remembered and listened to for a long time. And I want to thank you for that. Before I say anything about Oldsmar, in my opening remarks, I want to introduce everyone that is around this table. I'm going to start over at this far corner, and when I introduce you, I want you to tell us what your first association is or was with the city of Oldsmar, be it a relationship or be it a date, okay? And the first fellow I want to introduce is at the far corner over there, is Al Boyd. And you can just speak into the camera up there, and you go ahead and tell those people when you came here and a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. I am Al Boyd, as he said. I am not a resident of Oldsmar. I have never been, but I'm vastly interested in the town of Oldsmar. And at the present time, my grandson is writing a book on northeast Pinellas County, and that will be published very soon. We have now 51,000 words ready for the publisher, and every statement in the book will be verifiable in written information for posterity. I thank you for the opportunity of coming here. I am a neighbor, not a resident of Oldsmar, although at one time I owned a great deal of property in Oldsmar, practically everything north of the Tampa Road. That was my interest in it, and I don't know of any better place to live than the town of Oldsmar, but I cannot say that I'm a resident. Thank you.
That's okay. And our next guest, and you don't have to stand up if
I don't have to stand.
No, you don't have to stand up if
Okay,
you don't want to. Just go ahead and just.
I'm Judy.
Is Judy Brown. Judy Bryan.
Bryan, and I came to Oldsmar when I was 14 from Rockford, Illinois. And I hate to say it, but when I came here, I thought, where in the world have we gotten to? It looked like such a small little place, and I didn't like to drink the water there, and I was very unhappy for a day or two. Then I started meeting people and went down to the bay, and everyone was friendly, and it was the nicest crowd, and we all stuck together. Of course, we kind of had to right then, but we really liked it. And I guess that's about all I can say about me right now. And I finally moved to Tampa. I married my husband here. He came out from Tampa to work in the bank while Mr. Trask was on his vacation. And I went and exchanged a $10 bill to see what he looked like. And that started it. And then we moved to Tampa after our boys were born.
Okay, thanks a lot. And our next guest is
Mary Ruth Bowles, and I met and lived and roomed with Elvira Bowles at Tallahassee, and came home and met Paul Bowles, and in a year's time we were married and we lived in Tampa.
okay. And our next guest.
Beatrice Canaday. We came to Oldsmar when I was about 5 years old, and my first recollection of coming into Oldsmar we didn't have any place to stay, and we stayed at the hotel, and I thought that was just great. I can remember the big winding stairway, and I thought that was so pretty. And I did enjoy seeing that, and well, I've enjoyed many years here in Oldsmar.
And our next guest?
I'm Bernice Conklin Coleman. I came here 75 years ago this month, and if you think things are wild here now, you should have seen it then. The Rios had purchased all this property and offered his workers in the plant an opportunity to come here, and he shipped their furnishings, everything, and they came and built, I guess you'd call them shacks. There weren't sanitary toilets, and we came here a week before Christmas, and there was no dairy. Of course, there was no place to buy bread, no grocery store, nothing, except the good weather. And of course, we as children loved it because we loved the warm weather and we loved the bay. And I think my mother had her problems, though, with the sulfur water, which gagged her when she tried to drink it. I think she finally put tea in it.
Okay, and our next guest?
I'm Bob Keller. I came here in 1918 with my parents, who came down with REOs to start the tractor plant and founder here in Oldsmar. I remember, like Steve said, everyone was so friendly, and coming from Michigan, we weren't used to everyone that you met being a friend. They kind of looked at you and up there, and you were an outsider, but down here everyone was part of the gang, and there was lots of good times. The bay was where we spent most of our time. There was good fishing, good oysters, good crabs, lots of fun.
Good swimming.
We spent most of our time on our bathing suits. The old pier that ran out in the bay, I remember when my father went home one time, his brother met him at the railroad station and said, "Herm," said, "remember those sharks we used to get down there about that long?" He said, "Don't forget, they were 6 feet long." He wanted his stories died when not find out he'd been telling stories, but Oldsmar, I have a lot of fond memories. I left here when I was in the 4th grade, but went to Dunedin, but still Oldsmar has a lot of fond memories. Like you mentioned, the old hotel. We lived in the hotel till the furniture came down, and it's hard to believe the old hotel burned down. All that's gone. The grocery store that's there, the old barber shop used to be down the road. When you drive by, you can still picture them in the back of your mind.
Thank you. And our next guest?
I see that Bob has fond memories of the barber shop.
He got it all.
He got it all, really. Well, my father moved to Florida in 1919 over into Sonoma-Sassa and had a business manufacturing conveyors. And he moved to Oldsmar in 1930 into these tractor buildings that Bob referred to that were empty at that time. And Mr. Olds wanted payroll and get something going in here and keep people working. So my dad moved his business over here, and we had a manufacturing business, built conveyors and citrus machinery. Al's father used to run some of his oranges over our citrus plant that we had as a test plant there in one of the buildings that Olds had. So I have fond memories of Oldsmar, and I just love all these people that are here. It's just great to see them all here again. I wasn't an original, but I knew the people and went to school with them, near all these people here. And so I know a lot about Oldsmar, and I'm trying to collect history on Oldsmar. And if anybody listening to this tape has some artifacts of things that were made in Oldsmar, like an old tractor, I'd love to have an old tractor or an old Grove heater that we can put in a little museum that the city has now provided a space for. So I'm just delighted to have this group here to help preserve history.
I'm learning some things about Bud that I didn't know before, and I'm going to use them on him. Bud, the last tape we had, I introduced him as Bud Lister, and I got criticized for it. He didn't even introduce himself this time. So this is Bud Lister.
That threw me off. I only knew Bud Lister.
Thank you, I appreciate that. See there?
Hey, you got it.
We'll come around the table now, and our next guest.
I'm Richard Maltinas. I was born in Tampa in '29, and we moved out to the farm just outside of Oldsmar in '46, where we've been here ever since, with the exception of 2 years that I was in the Navy. I'm also a retired postmaster here in Oldsmar for 30 years. And this afternoon, I'm sitting here with these lovely people, waiting to hear some things before my time on Oldsmar that maybe I've never heard before. And I hope we have a very good meeting.
We will have a good meeting. Now, the better part of this half is the next man to introduce himself.
I'm Tom Maltinas, Richard's father, and I moved out here in Oldsmar in 1945, in the outskirts of Oldsmar. I've never been a resident of Oldsmar. And right now I'm living 50 feet away from Oldsmar. And the property where I'm living now was supposed to be the Oldsmar Yacht Club. And the property I own near Double Branch goes by the name of Bowles Subdivision. And I bought that all through the state, and I had a little farm there. So I got acquainted with a lot of people here in Oldsmar, and they were very good to me. And mayors, councilmen, it goes way back. It makes me feel a little squirmish right now, a little shaky, because to know that there's still a lot of people that I haven't met for a long time, they're still alive, and that makes me very glad. And I am very proud to see Oldsmar, because I know when I lived in Tampa, people would, when they hear Oldsmar, they laughed. I know Pinellas County laughed at Oldsmar, but now they're paying attention to Oldsmar, because Oldsmar is going and going and going, getting better and better, and I am glad that I lived so close to Oldsmar all these years and these good friends that I've had.
Thank you. Our next guest, everybody here is a special guest. They really are. But I have to say this, that our next guest has lived in this town longer than any other person in the city of Oldsmar. And for that, Lon, we thank you.
I'm Marilyn Gamble. I don't know that name hardly. They called me Gamble since I was a kid.
It used to be Kid Gamble.
Yeah. Yeah, you just got to.
Yeah.
We came here, my mother and father and dad, my mother and father and I came here in 1918, and my dad knew Olds up in Detroit, but he came down here from my mother's health, and Olds put him in charge of the sawmill and planing mill. It was over the other side of the railroad track. And after that, I've forgotten what year, but my dad and Bob's dad had a cabinet shop. And it was in the old garage here. And then they had over in the saw and the planing mill too, I think, wasn't it, for a while? I know they had it in a couple of places.
They had things all around. They could move around to It's hard to believe, as big as the old sawmill was, you can't find any trace of it anymore.
No, it just,
Wood bone locomotives and all the rails, the oxen, the mules they use for getting the logs in.
yeah.
The size of the logs, too, you
Yeah.
don't see anymore.
What, north of the railroad tracks?
Yeah.
I remember that now. It came to me.
Across the
sawmill.
highway,
It's an awful
across the
big
highway,
building.
yeah.
It would, I remember that now.
Sawmill is the other side
I
of the
couldn't-
track, and the planing mill is this side.
Mhm.
There's a pile of sawdust there,
Yeah.
over 1,000 feet high for many years.
And I remember you when you were riding on the scooter coming down by my farm,
That's right.
when you were a young man. Go ahead, dude.
Well, that's about all. I've enjoyed Oldsmar for a good many years. And there's always been a lot of nice people here, everything. I couldn't say anything bad about Oldsmar if I wanted to. I don't want to.
We'll get a lot more out of him in a little while, because he has a lot of history up here. And our next
I
guest.
have to be reminded of it.
That's okay.
Right.
We can handle that too.
I'll try.
That's why we have that lady on your left.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm Marilyn Gamble, Schonborn, and I've lived here my 49 years. I remember the old school, and I was very, very upset when they took my little schoolhouse away.
So was
Me
Because
too.
I went to school there from first to the fourth grade, and we had one row of each of us. And I wish that today they would name the brand-new pretty school back there Annie Tyree, but I don't know what you'd have to go through to get that, but she was a jewel. I raised my 3 children here, and I love it, and I did swim in the bay, and my kids swam in the bay, and we're still living. You know, everyone's like, ugh, swim in that, but when that's all you have, and you just make do. But I remember a lot of things, too, as we go along.
And last is sometime the best.
Okay. Bethel Swanson, Van Biber now. My father and mother moved here, and I say close to the time that Lowndes' father moved here, because the way I understand it was around 1918. And my father started the grocery store in the hotel building. Down below the hotel was all these buildings. There was a drugstore and a hardware store and his grocery store, dry goods store, I think. So my mother and father had 4 children. My oldest sister was Temp, and she married Mr. Petrie. And my brother Virgil is still living, and he lives in Tampa. And Glodille, my youngest sister, was born here, 1920. She's here today. And we went through the tidal wave in 1921. And we were living down next to the big building they called the Suey Building at the time.
Where was that? Where was that?
It was down on the main street at the end there, about a block from the hotel.
Oh,
Uh-huh. And there was a little house on the other side of it where we lived at that time. We later years moved to Congress Street. But first, when we moved here, we lived in the back of the store building. And my dad started the grocery store. But we were crossing over to go into this big Suey building there because the water was coming in our back door from the bay, from this tidal wave in 1921. Every once in a while, somebody writes an article, and that's been in the paper 2 or 3 different times lately. And somebody was helping Mother. Glodille was about a year old, and she dropped Glodille. The man caught her by her feet. And Mother had packed all her jewels in this little suitcase, and that floated all the way across the highway before the man could rescue it. Never thought any of the watches or anything in there would be any good. But later, after she passed away, I had her watch fixed. and I still have it. You know, but I never dreamed it could be fixed after going through that salt water. So we had many, many good times with all the young people growing up here in Oldsmar. I have lots of good memories of everybody. And it was just a gang of kids that grew up and stuck together. They always went to the bay to swim. We'd have big fish fries, like I said a while ago, down at the pier. And we just had lots of good times, dances every week and different things. There was always something to do. We all went to church. After church, we'd all walk to the pier. When that train run at 10:20, that was a signal for everybody to go home.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Elsa's got a good memory.
my parents' home is still here on Congress Street,
Still
but
there.
it's been sold, yeah. Somebody else lives there.
Okay, I want to thank every one of you. And before we get into that, I'm Jerry Beverland, or Gerald Jerry Beverland, whichever you prefer. I have not had the exciting as you have. I have not lived here the years that you have lived here or seen what you've seen. I have had the privilege of living here. Another couple years, I'll be pushing 30 years here in Oldsmar. I have been in Pinellas County since 1946. I came when I was 12 years old from Idaho. And I never knew Oldsmar was here. I never even dreamed there was a place up here as Oldsmar. I was managing a Winn-Dixie, and I was looking for a house. We were the first house on Starkey Road, just down by J.B. Starkey's after he left. And this fella, another store manager, came up and said, I found the ideal place for you. Because he knew that I don't like a lot of people around me. So he brought me up to this place called Oldsmar. And I said, Oldsmar, where, you know, what county? So we came up, and there was a house on the bay, the northernmost point of the bay. And I seen this, and I said, this is where my kids are going to be reared. We had 4 young kids. I said, this is where they're going to be reared. They can run till they drop. What a fabulous town. Remember when you come across the old bridge and hit that brick road? I just said, I'm coming into heaven with that brick road. So we bought the house. And I'm not leaving. To me, this is the most fabulous city in the state. There's been some comments. The little article read here that was written. I have gotten some of my questions out of there. Oldsmar has been overlooked in the past. Oldsmar will never be overlooked again. Never. I said this in the last tape, and I'll say it again. Oldsmar is where every other city wished they were. Even though we're that old, 1918, for what we have here, we have the beginning of a fabulous city because we have all the area to grow in. So, I have your same sentiments. It's a fabulous town. I think it's great. A little history. Now I'm going to give you all a chance to correct me, okay? So after I finish, you go ahead and correct me some of the things I say. This is primarily for the tape and for discussions. I think it was April 12th, 1916, when everything was finalized, or around that date, and R.E. Olds purchased approximately 38,000 acres. It was 37,500 and some acres, which comes out to almost 54 square miles of land. That land was from Pasco County south to Tampa Bay, from Lake Tarpon, east to the Hillsborough County line, Also, east of the Hillsborough County line, way into Hillsborough. Also, half of Safety Harbor, and a great big part of Clearwater. He bought it all at the same time, so the people in Safety Harbor, they don't know it, but they almost became part of Oldsmar. He paid, I think, something like $400,000 for the whole thing. Now, I may be off a little bit here, but it was about $400,000. I have seen the original title search. I was trying to swipe the title search, but I got caught. Bud won't let me keep it. But I'm going to try. When, as the little paper said, the slogan that REOs had was Oldsmar for health, wealth, and happiness. That was the slogan he came up with when he was trying to sell it. He built a post office, the railroad station, the Wayside Inn, and a power plant, which I never knew until here on our first tape, that Oldsmar had a power plant. I didn't know that. I also found out that they serviced, I think, part of Safety Harbor and part of Clearwater.
Safety Harbor and electricity.
Palm Harbor.
Palm Harbor?
Dunedin.
Dunedin?
Yeah. So when they had electrical store and the power went off all over.
I want everybody that watches this tape in the future to know that Oldsmar had the first power plant in the north part of the county. Okay? I think it was around 1925 or 26 when Tico came in.
25.
25 when Tico came in, okay. Olds built the Rio Farm, and they were basically, I think, in Hillsborough County. And that's where Tommy comes in and where you were reared. I found out that there was a park across from the hotel, which I didn't know. I take it there was a gazebo across from the hotel or something that they had.
Yes.
Every Sunday afternoon that they had music.
They had alligators in the pond.
They had alligators in the
And other animals too, I'm sure.
What pond?
They had a pond all out here. This was a
Right back
park
out here,
and a
used to be
pond.
a fenced-in pond. They had a deer and a fence out there.
Yeah.
Because when the lightning killed one of the deer, everyone in Oldsmar had venison.
Okay. All right. The pond was on the south side of the railroad tracks?
Right.
That's where the bank building is now.
The entire park was on the south side of the railroad track.
Right. Okay. The pond was where the bank built. Okay, that's what we want. And I think the largest industry, correct me if I'm wrong, in Oldsmar at the time was the Oldsmar Tractor Company?
Cleat-track tractor. He named it the Cleat-track. It was a small track type tractor because of the muddy condition of Oldsmar. The wheels wouldn't take hold. So he devised this track type small farm tractor. And he had a big demonstration here in the early 1920s. And it was a complete failure because he got in a little ditch, and when he started to back out, he found out his head engineer forgot to put a reverse gear in the darn thing. He was terribly embarrassed. I remember it like it was yesterday.
So he
I
had
was sitting on the horse watching it and almost applauding. Mr. Olds and I didn't get along.
So then what he did, then he went out and got a mule, and pulled the tractor out.
That is in history as Cleat-track Tractor Works.
Okay, Clay Track Tractor Works.
C-L-E, Cleat-track.
Cleat-track Tractor. Try to say
Yes,
that. Okay.
It's a tongue twister.
What?
Why it went to pieces.
In 19... See, old. Now I didn't know this.
Letterhead that showed a picture of that tractor.
Yes.
I
Yes.
gave it to him, and that's why he doesn't get anything else. I didn't get it back.
Just paying him back. Here we
You
go.
want to talk about something else, Jerry?
You want to talk about something else?
Yeah. I've got pictures of him, and I haven't gone back to him.
Okay. In 1926, which I didn't know, is that the name of Oldsmar was changed to Tampa Shores. Okay? And I still have the original gavel of the 1926 gavel that was used from that time until Ward Schreckengast was no longer on the city council. And he was a little upset whenever he left council. I was on council at that time, back in the early 70s. So he says, you want this gavel? I said, yes, I want this gavel. So he gave it to me. So right now the gavel is going into the in our new city hall. It's going to be displayed in there. Everyone in town needs to enjoy it like I've enjoyed it all these years. And in 1937, the name was changed back to Oldsmar from Tampa Shores. The racetrack, I think, was built in about 1926. And there was 2 or 3 reasons why Oldsmar never grew. After REO's began his development here, and in our first tape we talked about how they ferried people in from St. Petersburg to sell them land and wined and dined them. One thing was because of course, the land bust. Probably the biggest thing was the 1921 hurricane that scared everybody, because Oldsmar was pretty well devastated because of that hurricane. Now, hurricanes never bothered me. Since 1946, I could care less about a hurricane.
We haven't had one since that period, though.
Well, Elena taught me to respect hurricanes.
We haven't had the wind in the right direction.
I would like to ask you to get back to the first opening in Oldsmar for Mr. Olds to take advantage of. You missed just one little period of history there. The Tampa Road was paved with red vitrified Georgia brick in 1911 to keep Pinellas County from withdrawing from Hillsborough. That gave Mr. Olds a roadway out to his subdivision. Otherwise, he could not have developed it like he did. He would operate buses and bring people out here. Excuse me for interrupting, but I think we should continue this in a contiguous manner from the beginning of Oldsmar as much as we can.
That's fine. No,
Isn't what you call the Forest Lake Road from Forest Lake in Tampa Road, or 580, 84, that goes south to go near my way in? Isn't that still that red brick underneath that road?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, the red
That
brick,
red brick.
they were laid in place. There was no grading because we had no machinery. I remember that quite vividly, and every time in 1918 my daddy took me in the buggy to go over and buy some residue horses from World War I that were being auctioned in Tampa. So we led 2 horses back, tied to the back of the buggy, but every time a motorized vehicle would have to get off of the 9-foot paving, usually they were stuck but good because of the mud or sand, with no ditching, no grading or anything of that type. And I remember going over that quite vividly from downtown Tampa, and it went right by the old flowing wells that you're well acquainted with, and that water was very similar to that of Safety Harbor. It would cure any ailment.
Yes.
And I have proof of my grandfather going there in Safety Harbor, and doctors all over the state had tried to cure his stomach ailments. He got to Safety Harbor and started drinking that water. In 6 months, he was a well man. Never had any more trouble.
When I first
Now
came,
that water's gone for good.
when I first came to Florida, speaking about sulfur water, I was used to mountain water, and I thought sulfur water would cure anything, your life.
If you could drink it.
Well, I couldn't drink it. I drank
Especially if it's got a little salt in it, like my wells did.
I'd like
I had
to-
a lot of flowing wells.
One more thing, this highway from the county line out here, there's a monument there erected to the deceased in World War I. It is now on Kennedy Boulevard in Tampa, last I know.
Did Kennedy,
Coming
We were
in
looking
this
for it when we
afternoon.
came out.
We wondered where it was. We kept waiting to come to it.
Well, that has been preserved, the last I knew. It was on Kennedy Boulevard opposite Moss
There is
Brothers
one.
store
Oh, yeah.
in Tampa.
Yeah.
And that road was Memorial Highway
Memorial
with oak trees and palm trees alternate, and it caused many accidents later on when the speed began to increase a little bit.
Oleanders.
Now, I'm bringing back memories there as we progress with Oldsmar. Turn it back to you.
You said about the accidents, when they changed the bricks to a 14-pound asphalt brick.
That's when it
And
happened.
then when it started to rain, the oil come up out of the asphalt brick. And the old Livingston
You
service
couldn't keep
station
a car on
over
it, could you?
here had a wrecker, and as soon as it was starting to rain, they'd go out and jump this battery and get it started because it knew it wouldn't be long before they'd have a call. People would try to hit the oleanders because that'd slow them down. If hit the bricks, hit one of the oak trees, it'd damage them.
I suggest that we try to follow this time-wise, all we can, so to build up. And in the recording of history here, that will give us a background to elaborate upon.
That's fine. Without the red bricks, the red brick road was built from Hillsborough through Oldsmar.
It went on to Yellow Bluff, which is now Ozona.
Ozona, oh,
It was
right.
paved all the way.
Right.
9
And
foot wide.
It was 9 foot
was the
wide.
first paved road in this area to prevent Pinellas County from withdrawing from Hillsborough County.
But
But it did not
It
work.
didn't work right.
it didn't stop. It stopped at the county line, the red brick road, and from the county line to Tampa was a shell road.
Shell Road, okay. Okay, I remember the old Tampa Road into Palm Harbor. In fact, we just now removed one of the old bridges, one of the, down in front of Harbor Palms. It had been there since the beginning. They just now took that up because they moved the road over to the north a little bit. Then you said that, okay, after the red brick road, what was the next phase of that
They
road?
put asphalt.
They widened
They
it,
widened the road and put in asphalt.
made it dual lane. Lane for each direction of
That's when they
traffic.
planted
Then-
an oleander and an oak, an oleander and an oak.
That was in Hillsborough County.
Yeah.
And Dr. St. George Fechtig did the same thing within his area from Yellow Bluff up to Oldsmar. Where Olds was developing Oldsmar, Dr. St. George Fechtig got in with him and obligated himself for the sawmill here. And I have papers on that because I had to go to First Exchange National Bank, I believe, in Tampa, to settle all those obligations that Dr. St. George Fechtig had, because I bought thousands of acres of land that was offered after Fechtig's death. He had no heirs. He died a pauper because of bad conditions here in the boom. But he was a fine gentleman. Mr. Olds and I did not get along because I was a cattleman, and people would invariably leave the gates open out here. The cattle would get in town. How well all you people that live here know.
Old Mr. Albritton used to
And
try to
wild
keep
hogs were worse. Boy, I had nothing to do with the hogs, but they wanted to blame it on me.
There were two
So
Brayman
Mr.
bulls.
Olds and I did not get along at all. I was an outlaw. And I was made a deputy sheriff in 18, I believe it was. No, it was a little later than that. I was 15 years old when I was made a deputy sheriff in Pinellas County. Up until this year, I've served 62 years as a deputy sheriff in Pinellas, and I've seen it grow.
Yes, you have.
Did you ever see the trail that they had that went through here before the road was put in? Where our farm was, I think you remember where the farm was.
Yes, sir.
The trail run from one end of our farm all the way through down to Double Branches. And
It was
it's a dirt trail.
There's a trail there and a stopover, a two-story house at Rocky Creek. And Double Branches had a swale where you could walk your horses across it if the tide was not too high.
Yeah, I saw that trail.
Yes, sir.
We used to walk on it, and I wondered what it was.
Now, let me interrupt you again, please. I don't want to monopolize this. But the old military trail from Fort Harrison in Clearwater came approximately the same road after about the Ulysses plant down here. It followed the highlands across Pinellas County, coming, and the old bombing range, you remember that, on 580 during World War II?
Right.
It bisected that at an angle. It came under the traffic light, which wasn't there at that time, at McMullen Booth and Curlew Road. Then it varied just a little, a slight curve, and it passed right at the front steps of the Ulysses plant today. You can still see the marks of the old trail all the way through North Oldsmar, going just south of the racetrack road. And the track of the road running back to the barns from the racetrack road was approximately the same location where it crossed double branches. That was the only place you could get across double branches because the military had cleared it out.
Well, that, where it crossed double branches, it went through our farm.
Yes,
That piece
sir.
of ground on the other side there is still wild.
I remember your farm very well.
And that road, I imagine if it was burned off, you could go in there and still see it.
You can see the effects of it, yes, sir. The ruts are pretty well
Yeah, but
eroded.
when it burns, usually you can see something.
Correct. And I could almost walk there and show you the route.
It used to burn every year.
Well, we stopped that burning.
Yeah.
You know, we picked that up from the old Indian tribes here. They would burn small patches for the gardens next year. We used to have hundreds of acres of wild oats from here north. And that was wonderful deer and cattle feed. They'd make their living off those wild oats.
Yeah, when they burned off of that old grass, though, that wasn't no good, the new grass would come up.
The wiregrass was even edible to the livestock at that time.
Okay, whenever Oldsmar was developed to a point that people were starting to come in, like Mr. Keller and Gam's father, they both worked for Mr. Olds, right?
At first,
At first.
and they took over the plant.
Do you, excuse me, sir, do you have any proof of the ownership of the sawmill here? I'm anxious about that because I paid the obligations wherein Dr. St. George Fechtig had invested in this sawmill right here. And I'm interested financially in settling all those debts so I get clear title to every piece of property north of the racetrack and north of the Tampa Road, except for the section where the colored people were developing, and the Heidelberg Tavern, which I have the old Rex Cafe here. Some of you haven't seen it, just pass around if you care to. And that was the place that they all met from the racetrack. The jockeys and bettors and
A mile south of,
they served the drinks and food and some rooms.
Where the sawmill was, did some drag line or something were getting more or shell out of there and ruin
No,
that piece
sir.
of land?
No, sir. It was just east of that, several hundred feet.
Yeah.
And I own that property.
Yeah.
And they were digging shell, marl we call it,
Yeah.
on the north side of the racetrack road, just west, north of the railroad. and
Back
west
of the
of-
crest, Bay Crest.
No, there's not a subdivision there. It was west of the racetrack road, and the county of Pinellas stole thousands and thousands of yards of
Of shell.
material, of marl, out of that pit while I was in World War II fighting. And one of the biggest contractors in paved all that parking lot for the racetrack, stealing marl out of my property. I owned everything north of the railroad, all the way up to the racetrack.
See, where Bay Crest, back there, they were digging, I remember they were digging, they had a lot of holes, there's ponds in there with fish now. Unless they filled them up, I don't know if anybody filled them or not.
They're
I haven't
buildings on
been
it
back
now.
there.
They evidently filled it because there are warehouse-type buildings on that property. Your subdivision must have been on the other side of the road because it was not on the west side, the one that you mentioned.
No, well, this
More south of the railroad.
this was on the west side of the racetrack where they were digging a lot of
That's
shell
where they
up.
dug, but was not the subdivision. That was not subdivision, but it was laid out, the streets were paved, and I finally bought the last lot in there. I had to buy one lot at a time because people would move off and leave it, and I'd get one lot every time I could until I got the very last one. Then it was fenced with cattle pasture.
I want to introduce Earl Howley. This is another one of your Oldsmar's, well, one of Oldsmar's finest councilmen. Earl Howley.
I have to work for a living, so snuck off a little bit early.
I want to get some, I want to go on a little different line right now. Just get some, I want to get some thoughts from different people about different things. Do you have any memories of the Heidelberg? Any particular memories?
We used to dance there all the time. And we used to go down to the bay and get crabs. I don't remember the name of the people that had it at that time.
George Becker ran it the last part.
Yeah.
And before that, someone else.
We would go in there and clean those crabs and cook them and make crab salad or something and eat there, you know, and dance and have a beer for 10 cents.
That was a Rex at that time, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, when was the Heidelberg built?
Later, in the late 20s, early 30s. Because it caught fire one time. My daddy and I were under the adjoining oak trees eating our lunch in a paper bag, and my daddy noticed the smoke coming up from under the edge where the oak leaves had blown up under the building. It was up on concrete block about 18 inches off the ground. And we both took our thermos bottles when he called my attention to it and had those filled with coffee. So we poured our coffee and put out the fire. We looked and found that about a quart whiskey bottle, partially filled with water, had made a magnifying glass and set the oak leaves afire. Otherwise, that picture wouldn't have been possible. It turned into quite a popular spot for the racetrack people.
At one time, these people lived there. I think I was around in the 8th grade. And they had a grandson, I think, Robert
the German couple?
Elliott. Their name was Elliott.
There's a German couple on that about the last part
Yeah,
of
well,
the history.
that was later, and you know.
I don't remember their
This
names.
was.
Heidelberg, they called it Heidelberg.
What was the name?
Heidelberg.
The German people's name that operate the Heidelberg.
That wasn't the name, that's what they
You see, that Heidelberg is a German name,
Yeah.
and they named it that from the Rex Tavern.
I've forgotten what their name was now.
Somebody mentioned it to me.
George Becker.
Becker's?
Becker.
Right, you are.
Well, that
I
is
can know
your-
that right now.
Well, for anybody watching the tape, the Heidelberg was this, I thought it was a fabulous building when I came to town. There was nothing in it. Some hippies finally moved in there. But the Heidelberg set where Forest Lakes Boulevard is right now, going into the Forest Lake subdivision. And that was the Heidelberg. It was a fabulous, to me, it was a fabulous building. Do you have any memories there?
Is that the old Rex Cafe?
Yes.
The one thing that I can remember about it, I don't remember the people that had it, but they had a son, and we used to have our parties out there.
Yeah, we used to
Our
dance.
teenage parties, and we'd go out there and dance, and they'd have music for us, and just, that was part of our entertainment, that they'd entertain us out there.
I think we were about in around the 8th
Yeah,
or 9th grade.
yeah, and then-
8th grade.
Do you remember
You know-
Harry A. Prettyman?
Yes, I was
And
gonna
his
bring that
beautiful
up.
blonde wife?
Yeah.
I had lunch there just before the end of the building.
And you know, another thing is, that I remember is,
Prettyman? Was he the one that
Not right at
changed
the
it?
pier, but.
He was
There was-
advertising.
They had a
I
big
know, I
casino
know, I
there.
know
They
it,
used to
yeah.
call it the casino.
Changed the
Yeah,
name.
he
He's
pretty
the
much-
one
Were
that
they the
changed
ones
the
that
And
name.
changed the
that was
Tampa Shores?
Yes, later.
Just-
I
just
think
north
they
of
had
the
a
bay.
worse.
Well, you know
Lee.
where the playground is now, it was just,
I have
just
a,
at that, where the
Big
boulevards,
casino on
two
the
boulevards,
bay.
between the
He
two
did.
boulevards, and there was
And then we went
this
there.
casino, and it was during Harry
they had a
Truman's
nightclub
time.
there
That was
too.
that
Yeah, he didn't like
On
it.
the bay.
And they had,
Where the new
That,
little field is.
Heidelberg was
Right
on a
next to it.
300 by 300 foot plot of land that allowed the St. Petersburg water line to come right along the edge of it, which you've tapped into in late years for your city supply here, as I understand it now. And they have some good wells up in the Keystone area.
I found something here in the Florida Gazetteer in 1925. The Rex Cafe is listed, and Rex Hudson is the proprietor.
That was the early days of the Rex building.
That was a pretty building.
Roberts operated it for a while too.
Ken Roberts, yeah, he did.
It was, to me, it was an intriguing building. It really was. I take my kids down there all the time and go through it. And
If I remember correctly, there was big
And-
French
and-
doors at the front of it.
In '21, there was a big barge broke loose in the hurricane, and it landed in the woods out back of the Rex Cafe.
Bud had told me that you had talked to him about that, and the only thing that must have come up Moccasin Creek.
Oh, it was north of there. I mean, it was, the Moss Creek run on out here, and it was almost north of the Rex Cafe where.
We didn't hear your question down this way.
It was a state,
There was during '21, during the hurricane, there was a barge broke loose someplace over Tampa or someplace and ended up in the woods right north of the Rex Cafe.
No, sir. No, sir. 1921, October 21st, 1921. I patrolled that area because I owned it. And there was no barge ever in there. Somebody has misinformed you on that. It may have floated up close to the Tampa Road, but not over it.
Well, it really doesn't matter.
It's a good story.
If the barge got
By the Rex
that,
Cafe.
Well, what I remember was in that hurricane that it seemed to me like the Bowles had their boat and the boat went into their home.
Right?
Was that right?
The home was right near the waterfront.
Yes.
And
I'd like to have,
Anybody remember when the
Ms. Bowles, tell us
railroad
about-
engine went over down on the bank during the hurricane? By the railroad trestle? When the train engine went down? Anybody remember
Yes,
that?
I
the
remember.
railroad
that.
trestle washed up almost to my home on the Curlew Road, and I recovered 14 by 16 40-foot sills that supported the rails and built a home on top of that, and it's just as square today as it was when I built it. In 21, I built that home.
That engine was laying on its side.
well, I think you had mentioned about the casino down on the,
I think that was during Harry Prettyman's time, when he,
Yeah.
he tried to have everything
okay,
big, on
when-
big.
When they used to bring all the tourist buses in,
Yeah,
that's
they-
where they used to end
That
up
was
down
it.
there and have their big parties and
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
And then later, they used to call it the two-bit club, because everything was 25 cents.
That's right.
yeah, there used to be a bouncer down
And
there.
I can just remember my parents talking about, the
Well, I would check in hats
good
down
things that
there.
were down there.
My mother worked there as a cashier.
I'd like
wanna
to
ask-
have Judy show us the pictures or whatever it is. She brought us some things along that I'm sure we've never seen.
They're not mine, Mary Ruth brought them. They're the
Oh.
Bowles, Mr.
Oh, all
Bowles.
right.
Yeah.
And I'd like to have her tell the story about Elvira Bowles.
That's what she should tell when we're talking about being in the water and floods and
These-
everything.
This is a picture of Elvira and Mother, and this is the banana plantation that they had down there on the bay.
Is that on where Shore Drive is, down along the water side or bay side of Beverland?
No, it's on the east side of Mobley Bayou.
Oh, okay.
I can show you on
This
this
is
map.
Father and Elvira sitting out in the, under the palm trees and right at the head of Tampa Bay, of Tampa Bay.
Yeah, big banana tree.
And this is the family, they're gathered in front of a rubber tree that Mother had in the living room in Detroit. And they shipped it down here and planted it, and I don't know whether it's still living now or not, but it was back in 24 or 25.
That was the rubber
Chairs, they
tree.
used to make across the road.
That's right, there's one of those chairs they made at the Sawmill.
The Oldsmar chairs, yeah.
Yeah,
Oldsmar chairs.
I'd love to have one of those to put in the museum.
Prettyman chairs.
They were
Yeah,
very
pretty much
comfortable.
chairs, yeah. Incidentally, these pictures of our Berger brothers, and I knew Al Berger, and he taught me how to fish.
We did.
He taught me how to cast.
Who made those Oldsmar chairs?
My
Who made
dad,
the chairs?
Who did?
my dad,
His dad.
Yeah,
they were
they were the best chairs.
So comfortable,
Prettyman
weren't they?
started.
Oh, they were
Pretty much
perfect.
started.
I think they were made at the same time when they painted all the telephone poles orange and blue.
Do you know if any of these chairs still exist?
My
shaking
mother
your
and
head.
father-in-law have a set
Your
still
mother-
out in the shed. out
Every once in a while you run into one. They last forever.
They were made of cypress.
Yeah, they big wide planks. They had wide, big, huge cypress trees in them. They
Yeah.
just solid, one solid piece made
The
of
buses that they brought out were six-wheelers.
The buses?
Buses, yes. They had six wheels.
Four in the back and two in the front.
No,
No?
one right in the middle.
And they
Front,
all went to
middle,
jump.
back.
Probably past, you know, when.
And they didn't have glass, they had,
Double branch, you went out
they were
that
open.
road, yeah, way out there.
Open buses. This is.
You haven't mentioned yet the CCC camp that was established here. Do you have that on your list?
No.
Civilian Conservation Corps was housed in the old factory buildings.
They're the ones that burned it down.
You know, we all forget these things.
I'm going to correct you all on that because I know more about that than any of
I bet you
you.
do.
My dad had his factory in there. Mr. Olds had promised him those buildings if he stayed there for 5 years. But Mr. Olds forgot that. And he
As usual.
he sold the property to Mr. Bland, who had previously been a developer in Oldsmar. And the next day, Mr. Bland leased it to the federal government for a transient camp.
Yeah.
And the transients, they went around and picked them up they were all over the highway in those days because nobody had any work. And the transients came in there and they insisted we get out. And so my dad got a hold of the old, what was started for a hotel building down on the bay. And the transients moved us over there, moved our factory, moved the machinery. So I know about that.
Well,
Then, you remember McMullen, Robert McMullen?
know him well.
He was in charge of the farm. They put in the farming and raised, the first time they got a bushel full of peas, they were just tickled to death. They were in business.
They put up a,
Is that old hotel still down
The
there?
building is still there. Roger Kumar owns it now.
So
And
much of it is
he's got a whole residence in it.
Is it just like it was?
He's got a residence there.
No, it's.
No, he finished it off like a hotel
Did he
now.
really?
Yes.
the,
Looks very pretty inside. Yeah. The whole
Is it
finish.
successful now?
Sir?
Is it successful?
It's his home.
It's his
Yes,
home
it's
now.
got a whole successful. Very
Roger
successful.
Kumar just bought the
now.
St. Harbor Spa.
No, no.
It just looks like it inside, the way he's fixed it up. It's
But
beautiful.
it's a horse.
And
They
it
just
is-
recently finished that.
Yeah.
It
I
used to
want,
be,
I want Mrs. Bowles to tell us about Elvira and the 1921 hurricane.
That's worth hearing about.
Yeah, I want her to tell us about that because she told me something I had never heard.
They stayed in the house until the water came in to the first floor. They moved everything upstairs that they possibly could. And Elvira was an excellent swimmer. Mother could not swim at all, and Father could swim. So they made it across, and when it got too deep, Elvira had to tow Mother across because she was quite a bit shorter than Elvira was. They finally made it up to a barn up near the highway, and they got Mother laid out, and Elvira noticed that Mother wasn't breathing, and she didn't know what to do. So she took a deep breath and leaned over and breathed into Mother's mouth. And in a few minutes, Mother started to breathe again. Of course, we'd never heard of
CPR.
What do you call it, yeah.
That's the first mouth-to-mouth resuscitation I've ever heard of.
Never heard of it at all.
Well, I
But
heard
she was frantic and.
that they swam over all these fences getting to the highway.
Yeah, yeah.
March the 21st of 1921, that storm hit here, came right up the bay, and at the traffic light on McMullen Booth Road and Curlew Road, the water was so deep there that Frank Hoppins had to move all his light furniture up on the second floor, and it got into the second floor. They piled furniture up there and got an axe and chopped their way into the attic.
Ham and Park Boulevard, just a block, a little bit east of, west of Park.
Okay,
The
Buckingham
house
Park.
that has the square thing on the top.
Okay.
And the water got just up to the top steps, and Dad said, we've got to get out. And they had told everybody to go to the bank building, because there was a big room up over there, so we evacuated up there. And I can remember my brother was on one side of Mother and my sister on the other side to hold her, so that they would all stay together. And Dad carried me on his shoulders, and I thought that was great.
When you said they evacuated the bank building, that's the building across the street?
Yeah.
And what?
When you said you
The bank
evacuated
building,
to the bank?
yeah,
That was the
we
bank.
stayed up,
Yeah.
well, I can remember, I don't know whether you remember, whether you were up there too. But all
No,
of
we
us
went,
kids.
that's when we went to the Suey building,
Oh, that's
that other
right. Well,
building down.
I can remember all of us kids thought we just had a ball up there. Judy.
Well, I went to school at
You know,
Warner.
we didn't realize what the danger was.
Middle of the morning, someone come and knocked at the door, and Mrs. Tyree stepped outside, and we kids all stood up, looked out the windows, and we were right in the middle of a lake. And
I'd like to make
about
one
5 blocks
suggestion.
from school home, my mother was out there, and there were 7 pine trees went down while we were walking home. When we got home, there were 5 pine trees come down in the yard. One of them come down this way, and, the wind changed different direction. None of them hit the house. 3 of them went down on the garage.
Yeah, where was this?
That was, what,
That's Jefferson Street, about a half a block north of 580 of St. Pete Drive, as I understand where you live.
there used to be a swamp right north of the house, and when they dredged up, put the bayou and all in down here, they filled the swamp up. And we'd go out there and catch the mullet and all, when they'd come out of a dredge line. You'd get a pretty good mess of mullet there, just a short period of time. I went down there today and I don't even find that old bayou.
No, it's not.
Oh, no.
If we didn't have those causeways out here we got now, that last storm we had, you saw water in your front yard, would have probably been in your house.
Actually, it was in my house. I had 6 inches.
I'd like to make one suggestion to the group here in advertising Oldsmar, like I did in locating the Sperry plant down here, which is now Unisys. I've persuaded them to build up at least 18 inches higher than they had planned their floor. And getting industry into Oldsmar, be frank with them and tell them that occasionally we do have a hurricane pushing the water of the bay up this direction. And if they prepare for it, we will profit in the long run, such as this medical facility out here at the Johnson Johnson, I believe it is, north end of Little Gim Gong Road. That is too low and that floods quickly. They should have built that up a little higher. And if we tell these people what the situation is actually so they can prepare for it, I think we'll be in the long run ahead of the game.
Well, the federal government handles all that.
Not to scare them, but
Well, Johnson & Johnson is not in the city of Oldsmar.
Can I ask one
Yeah.
question, some of the people should know? When the big hurricane come in 21 or 22, when was it?
21.
21. Were there a lot of farms around Oldsmar? I
Yes,
see it here on a picture here that look like it's a farm, big
There used to
farm.
be a big farm out here this side of the county line. They raised experimental pigs and grains and whatnot, and then later they took and moved some of the silos and all over across the county line on the north side of
Well, okay, once we say this, kind of identify what we're talking about.
He's talking about west of the St. Pete, of Racetrack Road, and a little south of the Tampa Road is, I believe, where the farms were originally.
They started
And they
right at the county
moved
line.
cat a corner across that, so they were east of Racetrack Road and north of the Tampa Road.
They were in Hillsborough County.
How big were the farms?
Oh, they must have had 40, 50 acres of corn there one year.
Yeah, they had lots of pigs.
They're growing their own feed also for the cattle.
They
Well,
built
did they
a,
have any vineyards?
they built a concrete silo.
Yes, there was a vineyard here.
There were,
Yeah, there
because
was.
I heard that they had farms and vineyards, and when that
Yeah.
hurricane come and wiped them out, they all left.
The vineyard was just, I really think that was right in Hillsborough County, because it was right off the county line.
Well, I heard
The-
about that.
No, you're correct on that. I just looked up the record on that, and I got the original deed of a copy of the deed from Rios Farm to the Concord Grape people of Michigan, who evidently had their vineyard over
Wasn't
in
it
there.
Zimmerman
See,
that had?
when I start farming, when I'm buying the Bowl subdivision, 5 acre tract at a time, I was told that it was farms there, but during the hurricane, they all disappeared. The people left. There was vineyards, and they were farming. They said they had good pepper plants, and acres and acres of peppers. And after that, I was the only one that farmed over here.
I think Bee's father had a
Yeah, my
farm.
dad had, it was 40, there was 40 acres that was north of the, on the other side of the railroad track.
Yeah.
And I can remember one year he had tomatoes, and he had a packing place where he packed tomatoes.
Peppers.
And then at the last time that I can remember really a big crop that he had was a pepper crop. And that was the year that we had a bad frost, and he lost everything that year.
That was after the
I see in this
But that was after the hurricane.
hurricane.
In this 1925 Florida Gazetteer, there's an item that says F.H. Coleman, truck drawer.
Yeah.
Across from the bar down here, the barn bar on the 580, that whole ground out in front of there was all under farm, and that had to be hundreds of acres in there. They used to have, Mr. Harmon had a pasture there, and we kids, we used to walk across this pasture, and you could still see the rows in there. In fact, today, if it was burned off, you could probably see them. And that would probably run from the racetrack road down to beyond this bar restaurant. All that area north to the railroad track, that was all under farm there.
Well, Lon, do you,
That's when they moved it from over this side and moved it across.
But I saw that, so I know that was all farm.
okay, let me ask, Lon, do you remember any other places that there was farms here, other than out on the racetrack road?
No, I don't believe, I can't remember. If I were reminded of it, I'd think of it, yeah, I remember.
When was the Gladiola? Was that when
That
I
was
was
on
a
this
kid?
side,
Was
yeah.
that was?
Gladiola farm.
I remember that one, but I don't remember when.
That was later.
And that came.
The Rio put in corn, and he put in a concrete silo and cut the corn up like they do in Michigan, putting salt in it. And it fermented. I don't think he ever tried it again.
Okay, where we,
Well, they had the pigs, drunk pigs run all over.
yeah,
This was
Really?
from the Pinellas County line in Hillsborough County down past Double Branches. That was all cultivated.
is that where the silo was?
The silo was just east of the county line.
Just east
There
of
were at
that.
least 3 silos there.
And he
I
had,
remember them, they were there when we came.
they had the choppers where they take the corn stalks and put them in and then lift them up into the top of the silo, salt it.
Mr. W.F. Allen. Remember Mr. Allen?
Yes.
He was the dairyman, had a dairy out.
But I don't remember that he was a dairyman.
I don't remember what
Harmon
he
was the
but I
last one in
remember
there.
where he lived.
Yeah, Harmon was the last.
Some of us didn't.
I want to ask, before we go too much further, I want to try to identify where some of these things were, okay? So I will ask you, then you,
There's one thing I think that Judy would, I don't know who remembers it, but I remember it well, was the fire of the post office.
Oh, yeah.
And her mother and father were in the post office at the time.
well, that's what I'm going to get to, because I...
Is it?
Yes, because
Okay.
I know there's some things that that I didn't know existed. Hey, first of all, tell me where the old tractor company was.
Near where Heath is
North
now.
of the,
Right into Washington.
You know,
Between
where
the Tampa
railroad
Road and the racetrack.
the highway crossed like this.
Yes.
The office was right in here, and the machine shop was in here, and the foundry and plant was farther on down there.
At the end of Washington Street, north of Tampa Road.
Okay.
And back this side of it was where the sawmill was.
Sawmill.
Up on where Top Cat and Heath.
Yeah.
Top Cat and Heath are in there now, yeah.
Okay, that's where the
Wasn't there an
saw.
ice plant there too, where they made ice?
Later, yes.
the Gates boys, you remember the Gates boys?
Yeah.
And they worked, they'd make the molds in the morning, and then they'd
They changed it
pour
into an ice
the
cream
molten
plant.
iron
Oh, they did.
Yes.
into the molds in the afternoon for the,
I
some
remember
part of the
well.
tractor, I don't know what it was.
I knew a
remember
Gates
the
and
ice
Alliance
plant
Club that
being-
used to live in Oldsmar.
And
Was
there
it
was-
Some of them
Gates?
down there,
Yeah.
that
Is that it?
sawmill was on the other side of the building.
Horace and
Forrest?
Complete.
Alice.
Alice.
Well, it was in
I
that
know
area.
someone
Yeah,
who
that's
has
what they just wanted to
a
know
parts
about.
breakdown
Yeah, it
manual
was
and
across
operator's
the
manual
road.
for
Yeah,
an
I mean,
old
that's-
farm tractor.
Between the highway and the
Yeah,
railroad.
the boys' physiques
Can you give me a
were
copy?
beautiful.
I'd probably get them
Do you
to
remember
share a
Lieberman
copy of it.
that
The,
had the store there?
Certainly.
I've heard people say that he was just 50 years ahead of
His
time with
wife
the
still
tractor,
lives in
because
Davis.
the tractor was very similar to the ones
Davis
that they're
Island.
using for lawnmowers and tractors today.
Yes, the picture that I saw of it was very much of a,
Yes.
as opposed to the old-fashioned tractor, that steam tractor. I grew up in North Dakota, and we had a steam tractor. As opposed to that, it looked more like a car as opposed to a
Yeah,
tractor.
it was a gasoline.
Yeah, it was a gasoline-powered small tractor.
Well, they made the engine and all, but the first tractor, they used it like a plow without a horse pulling it. And then when Ford come out with the tractor you could ride in, they hooked a little piece in behind it, so a fellow had a little cart pull with him. But like he says, when they didn't have a reverse in it, they got in the ditch, it wasn't much good.
Had to go back to the mule.
I don't know
The mule pulled back up.
how many they sold, but that foundry must have been open for a year or more. 9 months.
You know, they were making Grove heaters there and all sorts of heaters, and we had about 5 years without a frost. That's when Dad went, Dunedin went with Skinner Machinery over there.
I see an item here, Frank Keller, Vice President and Treasurer, Keller Oil Heater Manufacturers. 1925.
Your dad.
And his
That
uncle.
was my uncle.
Your uncle? Okay. Okay, now let's get to the post office. Where was the first post office? Lon, where was that?
It was
It
in the
was right
bank
across from
building.
this old bank building.
Yes, in the bank building.
Because I was gonna mail a package in there this afternoon. I thought it'd be fun to have, it's going to my niece that was born in Oldsmar. And I thought it'd be fun, so I was gonna walk from the building over to the post office right in that corner over there. It wasn't there.
No.
Now, these people know about it when they came here. Before they came, the post office was an open-air post office in the park between Tampa Road and this area.
You're not old enough to remember that.
That's when Mr. Olds and I had a fight to begin with. Don't tell me. Excuse me, huh?
Beat up Mr. Olds.
Yeah, it was right in here.
It was in the park
Well,
with the
just about
animals.
right where the city hall was, wasn't it?
No, ma'am, it was next to the Tampa Road. Because I rode a horseback in there when I was 6 years
Yeah,
old.
well, I knew it was there somewhere.
The post office had the boxes out on the porch, which was
Yeah.
covered with a wooden floor. You walk up on the porch, go and open your box, get your mail. The other back end of that post office was a drugstore.
Isn't that where your
My
mother
mother
and
was
dad had
ill,
first?
so my daddy saddled a horse, said, boy, you go over there to that little drugstore in Oldsmar and get some medicine for your mother. So I rode over here and tied my horse to a post that supported the roof on the post office, walked around the porch, which surrounded the building, to the post office, left the prescription. Doctor filled it in a few minutes. I walked back, and a sudden summer rain had come up, and my horse had stepped up into the wooden floor of the porch. Mr. Olds was standing there just foaming at the mouth, mad as he could be. He said, boy, is that your horse? I said, yes, sir, it is. He said, you get that horse out of here before it messes up this floor. I said, Mr. Olds, I'll move that horse when it stops raining and not before. And that's the first words that we had, but not the last. But I was an outlaw, like I told you, because these cattle would come through the gates and had ruined the nice lawns here and the flowers and the little gardens, and they blamed it all on my daddy and I.
Where was the location at now?
He
It was
says where
right
the,
across from this, what I call the bank building.
The post office is in
I
the,
think Alfred's in error about that location.
I think
it was
said
in
he
the
got
open
10
space there with the animals all around it. When he had a lion cub there that would sound off every once in a while, and you could hear it for a mile out there in the woods.
it was right off of this street, same
It was
street.
on
I
this
think
street
he's
here.
got Tampa Road and State Street confused. I believe that I'm not sure,
There was
because I
nothing
wasn't
there
here.
but open land at that time.
Yeah.
The building you're talking about, it had a porch
that
around,
was
was right in
before
front of
right
this one.
here.
It was
Right
across
here,
from
where we
it.
are.
Right in front of this building.
Maybe he's talking about something way earlier. Was it you talking before State Street was in?
That was,
The bank's on the other side of the
1918.
street.
Yeah,
to be specific.
and that building was there. from that
I could be
corner.
wrong on it, but it was in an open space. And I came down the Brick Road, or Tampa Road, and through the animal display to the building. Now, it could have been this far away from the Tampa Road.
Yes, it was.
Because things have changed here.
That's what we think.
This porch.
Location.
Well, when were
My
the prayers
grandchildren
postmaster?
My children used to
That's
walk
when-
from my
That's when they were,
grandparents'
that
house
was
to
when
that
it was
building.
at
My
At
wife
the
worked
end of
in
the
it.
street there.
State Street and whatever, on Park Boulevard.
right here, right here.
And there was it was a post office there. There was
60 years
the post
ago.
office was in the back, and there was I don't know what, a dry goods store.
Drugstore?
And then there was a grocery store next to it.
That's,
What was the boundary of your
Yeah,
park?
but that's another one.
No,
That's
priors
the other
were-
one.
That was the second post office.
Right.
Was that, well, that, I can remember that. 'Cause
That was the more modern post office.
Well, they had it in the bank building
Because I
too.
remember that one time, if the Republicans were in,
Before your mother and them.
one person held the office, he was
Well, I'm wondering
postmaster,
about-
opposite.
Well, I know the
She was
parents
in this
were
building right over on this
at that
side of the street.
post office that I was
And then you went in that other one.
Can you define the location of the original park here?
yes, for what they have just said, it's right here where the bank is.
Then I am absolutely wrong on the location, because I came down the Tampa Road and over to the park.
It was
The
right
park was
here,
full
the
of
one you're
animals.
talking about.
Let me ask a question on that post office deal. From the way I understand, the first place they had post office here, they had a room in the hotel over here, according to what Lown said. They got their mail there. Then they had a building over, which is right in front of this building here on State Street, that they had for real estate, and then they turned it into a grocery store and a one-room for the post office, and they had a porch all across the front and down the side, big overhang, and you would come up on the porch and go up to a box section. There's about 100 boxes there.
Well, that's a building.
And Mrs. Harmon, I don't know if she was at that time, was postmaster here.
That's right.
You remember
All right.
Pryor?
Now, Mrs. Harmon, who was postmaster, my wife, worked part-time for her before they moved out.
That's Ed Harmon's
later.
mother.
Right.
M.C. Pryor,
Right.
postmaster in
Yeah, that's what-
1918.
Remember Mrs. Pryor?
I'm
1916.
in error,
Back before Mom.
That's all right.
and I admit it, but
Post office, I think that
the
was.
first post office that I can remember here was surrounded with a porch and open-air post office. Now,
See, I
St.
was-
Petersburg claims it's the first open-air post office.
See, I was trying to find out where the first one was, and like I said, Lowndes said it was in a room over in the hotel. They had to have something.
Yeah.
And then he said this house was built for real estate, and then they turned it into a grocery store and a post
That is
office.
absolutely correct.
Okay.
It's coming back to it now.
John Gamble had the grocery store.
Sure did.
Right.
Say something.
But then there was another building across there that burned too on that corner.
Okay, so,
Yeah, but
so-
the post office was moved in the back of that drugstore there. Judy's parents were in there. That's when the fire was.
But this was.
They had that big building on the front and the post office and the
Right.
barber shop just behind
Two
it.
Priors, M.C. and
Gamble.
R.L.
Yeah, R.L. was, he was.
Your
R.L.
father's
was
nephew.
MC, who was MC?
I have a note here,
And apartments upstairs.
I have a note here, this 1916,
Yeah.
this 1960 gazetteer,
Down the barns.
I don't know if
that
he was
R.L. Pryor was the druggist, so that's probably where you went and got your medicine.
Could be. I got another, I guarantee you.
M.C. Pryor was the postmaster.
Well, good.
Let's get back to
My
the,
folks were there after Mrs. Pryor.
let's try to talk one at a time, because this thing's gonna get garbled on us. Okay, now, you were mentioning the fire.
She knows more about the fire, I don't remember it.
You do, your parents.
Remind me of it.
All I remember is what I heard, but I remember, it seemed like your parents happened to look down and saw a light or smoke or something, and they rushed down and the post office was on fire.
Okay, now, which post office?
The one in this building across the street on the corner.
Yeah,
Was that the one in the animal park?
no.
No,
later
That was the one that,
No,
It was
this
the
later.
building, well, the same street as the hotel, the Wayside Inn.
Yeah.
And it was on this corner from
That,
it.
that was.
And that had a dry goods store in the front, a
Mhm.
drugstore at one time, I guess,
Yeah.
maybe. But a dry goods store the Whitehurst had.
Yeah, right.
And then the Snivels had a grocery store over there. And the post office in the back in that building.
And that was, what was upstairs?
Apartments.
Apartments, yeah.
And the
It was my
Whitehurst
building.
lived
We thought it
upstairs.
was a big building.
Snivels didn't come
The question
until...
is, was that the first or later post office? The first one was in the animal display park.
Yeah, the first,
Is that the first one?
yeah, then this was later because her
The other
parents.
one was later that you're talking about, all right.
Okay, then from there, we go to the bank, right?
From this one, here.
Well, like I said, it goes from the hotel to where, if they went over to the drugstore, that was on the corner over here, that would have been the second. Then it came over to this building over here, that was right in front of this one. Then Mrs. Harmon bought the bank building, and
Okay.
she moved it over there. And then, after we grew out, then we came over here.
We have 4 post offices then, and one of them burned.
That's why postage keeps going up.
Well, I think they
Not
saved
back in them
some of it. I
days.
don't think it burned.
I don't think it burned up.
No, it just had a fire in it.
Just burned up a little nail probably.
Yeah.
Okay,
Just the bills.
They never did have a fire.
This way we can ascertain the correctness of it.
Save the junk
with
mail.
different ideas.
yes, okay, okay, that's good.
Now, where the library is, wasn't that the first bank in Oldsmar?
Right next to it.
Yeah, yeah.
The bank was right next to the library.
This
Where
large
the library
building
is
probably.
now, in the back, the building there,
That's the
wasn't
first.
that the bank?
that's the original bank.
That's the one that got robbed,
It still says Oldsmar Bank on it.
Yes,
and then it went kaplooey.
yes. Okay, does anyone remember any other buildings? Because when you look at these photos down State Street, it looks like there's a great number of buildings down there. I know of the hotel,
There was a pool hall in there,
there was a pool hall in
And
there.
it
between the hotel and the corner,
eating
where they
place.
had the grocery store and
And
dry
an
goods
eating
store.
place someplace,
Huh?
a restaurant.
I don't remember where the restaurant was.
Where the hotel was.
There was a 2-story building, 1 block down on the corner they tore down.
Yes, that
What it had in it, they used the downstairs for the trailer park. It was over here where the bank sits now, and they would go over there to wash their clothes in there. Because this whole area also was a trailer park after that.
All right, Gam had, and his dad had a woodworking shop on Exeter and State Street, which is directly down the corner there.
Yeah.
And that was a big building that burned down.
It was a big garage building.
It was originally in a garage, wasn't it?
Built garage.
You see
City
the garage
garage.
back over in here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's-
It was the city garage, old had it built, see, and then Dad took that over. Mom's dead, and there were 2 of them were in there. Wasn't your dad in there?
I think he did.
And then, they were somewhere else too.
Kelly was,
I never did see it.
Kelly and your dad didn't,
And, they made these old white chairs that you're talking about.
they made them there? Is that where they
They
started
made them over there in the mill
first? And then-
first. And I think
and
that's
then-
that's probably where they quit making them, because they went out of business for some reason or other. I've forgotten. just how that happened, but.
When the mill shut down.
Huh?
The mill shut down, they weren't getting any.
Yeah, and then they never made any more after that, I don't think.
Got some nice pictures of
I would like to ask Mr. Gamble to locate his workshop and the first fire station we had here, which is Block W on the north side of the Tampa Road. Can you remember your auto repair shop there?
Yeah, Liberman's.
Right in the same building with the fire station. Am I correct on that location?
Oh, Lieberman's, where the
It was right at the apex of the...
580 and 584 come together where Pat Johnston had his station for years. That
I
was-
think he's talking about a garage and filling station that was on Tampa Road, but west of the railroad. Right in that
Right.
little corner that
North and south of the railroad.
A little bit.
East of the Lou Gimdong Road is Block W.
Right.
And the fire station was there just before the crossing of the Tampa Road over the railroad track.
And that was
the
we
first
got a
fire
picture
station.
somewhere of a building there that looked like a garage there.
If I'm wrong, someone correct me, but that was the first fire station that I can remember in this area.
Is that where Gilco Spring is now, basically?
Yes.
There's no building there now. is
No,
there?
it's nothing.
Nothing there?
Yeah, the spring people in
Yeah,
there.
Gilco
Yeah,
Springs
Gilco
is right
Spring,
there.
there is a fact that Gilco Springs is in that general area.
I haven't noticed it recently.
Yeah.
Okay, let me ask you, let me ask this now. The area we're talking about is by the, is on Tampa Road and where the railroad tracks go across by Gilco Springs. You're saying that at one time there was a service station there?
Yes, sir. Mr. Gamble had a service station next door to the fire station, or a part of it. Was that right, Mr. Gamble?
I don't remember the fire station.
I don't either.
Well, maybe you followed the fire station, but that was, you can't tell me, I believe, that there's any other location for a fire truck. I can't remember any, but I do remember a fire truck in that building. I don't know what his official fire station or what the score was.
That's what, it
There was
wasn't an official fire station, but they had kept the truck there. It was one of those old things.
Yes, sir, they answered the calls from that building, so
Had a
I
tank
thought it
that
was a
tipped
fire
over.
station.
Had a little tank, you'd tip it over and get soda water, yeah.
Boy, that
It was a little Ford, it was a Ford truck.
It was an original fire station, as far as I know.
Well, Lon, let me ask you something else, and then and you can chime in on this too, and you too.
Well, Lon's uncle was a fire chief.
Well, I want to ask, what other buildings or what other businesses was on Tampa Road in Oldsmar? Can you remember any? Anybody?
What is
That
Tampa
filling
Road?
station.
Hillsborough Avenue.
Hillsborough Avenue.
580.
We've
The
already,
only thing I can remember used to be the old Lieberman garage and store right over here. And then there wasn't anything else on Tampa Road except where you turned in and went into the tractor plant.
And when we
You had to
came,
go back and get into the Sawmill.
Whetstone had a filling station right at the beginning, right in front of the tractor factory, at the end of Washington Street.
And
Yeah, Whetstone.
it was a great big house, right next to Lieberman's
That was where the Liebermans lived.
Is that was Lieberman had his
Yeah,
garage?
and
You had a food
that
store.
burned down.
Oh.
I remember that house
It
burned.
was
Because
right
when
at,
we came, Lieberman had his filling station in the Apex up there at the corner where
Well,
the
that's
point.
what-
this is,
That was later.
this is where the railroad
It
and the
wasn't
road
Lieberman, it was
crossed.
Lehman.
He was in there
Lehman had a
first.
big house.
Lieberman.
yeah, that's
And
what,
then there was
The only building there was a filling station at the Racetrack Road intersection. That was there. They sold beer and wine and gasoline.
Harry
But
area.
that's farther south,
That was Harry area.
farther east.
Right, you are.
That's where the
There
Shelton
was a
station is.
home next to it that Harry lived there with his family. His
Correct.
3 daughters and his wife. Miss-
But before you got to that home and his filling station, there was practically all
A
blank.
little separate building, the filling station like.
Now, Lon had an uncle or somebody that ran a garage right across the road.
where was that?
John,
Joe Lister's,
My dad and
where his
him
brother's place
were in
is. Lister's.
partnership. They hadn't stayed Right, yeah.
He used to service my car there.
And then there were several.
Yeah, that was.
It's the only garage
That's
around
when
here.
Joe was done it, where the railroad comes here and
Had a garage
Tampa
up
Road
there.
there.
Joe lives
That was
there.
with John Gamble, his uncle had it.
Right behind us. Yeah.
They never put it on the computer then, did they?
Yeah, I helped build a cistern back there.
They dug an oil well when Prettyman was here. I don't know how big a pipe. I think it was about at least was it 2 feet?
About this big around, I think. That's
Went
when I used
down
to go
and
get
had
water
a
out.
gushing,
Good oil well.
but they never found oil. They found a lot of water.
You know.
If it's out at the racetrack,
Yeah.
when you go in to the Horseman's Gate, just before you get to the gate, on the left-hand side, the well is still there.
They capped it.
And if they capped it, they've been using sulfur water out of it. And when I was a kid, we used to go there with our horses and we stop and get water there. It was flowing all the time because the creek is right there. And that's what was left of it. But now they've got it capped and I think they use the water for the track.
Okay, well, we pretty well determined what was that on Tampa Road. I want to get back to the casino again. When was the casino built? Does anyone know?
It was during Harry Freeman's time here.
Early
But I
20s.
can't remember when.
It was very early, because I remember
In the
coming out
20s
here before we
sometime.
moved here, and it was there.
It was in the 20s during the
Yeah.
boom.
Early
During the
20s.
boom.
Prettyman started the boom right here.
Okay, Lon, it was built down on the waterfront,
Yeah.
east of the Little League fields.
Right about where they've got the palm trees waiting to be replanted.
Yeah,
If you
and the-
walk
and the
straight
Park
out there,
Boulevard.
right straight out there, you'll see a seawall,
Right
a pretty
in the
good sized
Park
seawall.
Boulevard.
Yeah, that,
Drag line to channel into it.
right.
It wasn't a natural waterfront as such, but it was waterfront after they channeled into the bay.
Now, Lon, you were a bouncer out there?
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you.
It was during Prohibition. I know that.
That's why they had to have a bouncer.
He wasn't a bouncer, he was a guard.
It was.
Well-informed gentleman.
Yeah, it was during Prohibition because they used to run.
Wait a minute, whoa, I just heard something here. They used to run rum in
Yeah,
From
I
Cuba.
think so.
from Cuba?
And
I was
Castro was here quite often, and the big house in Tampa, and some of our federal officials would meet with them down here for conversations. I dated a girl right next door to, maybe I shouldn't say it, next door to the big house. That's where this, the big labor leader that was disposed of recently, what's his name? The automobile tycoon.
Hoffa?
Jimmy Hoffa. I've got his complete history and also Mr. Old's grandparents' history in case of you want to get into that from the Library of Congress. And Jimmy Hoffa was quite prominent down here in the big house in Tampa at that time.
I think that ought to style of the history.
We're getting nowhere.
Yeah.
Maybe we should forget those
I think
things.
that should go to history.
Well, Lon, was it an active casino? Was there a lot of activity there?
Yes.
Yes, a short time.
Big dance floor right in the center of it. Big,
Well-
and they drank there.
They drank during?
How many months would that be, sir?
I don't.
How long did it operate?
When
I
the
don't
two big
remember how long
clubs
it
there.
was, but it was quite a
It
little
didn't
while.
last very long. They closed it up tight.
Yeah, they
I don't know
closed it.
why.
The revenuers got him.
Revenuers got them, sure, it's illegal.
Illegal stuff being brought in from Cuba.
I can't put it together. Can't
Well,
remember.
the old pier,
It was
used-
good.
That
the
was
old
during
pier used to run out
Prohibition.
there.
There shouldn't have been any
My
drinking at
mother
all
worked as a
anyway.
cashier for a while. After that club.
They used to bring that boat in loaded with coconuts, bags full of coconuts. And the coconuts were on the outside.
Yeah.
Bottles were on the inside.
I'd forgotten.
To our pier?
Well, your pier's not there
No,
now.
I know that. Well, the city of Oldsmar's Pier, I think is what he's referring
Well,
to.
the pier ran out, I don't know how many feet it went out.
1,000 feet.
1,000 feet, and it was wide enough for 2 Model Ts.
Right.
Right? And at the end of the pier, you drive out, or you could drive back, and then
Had a head out on the pier.
yeah, and then the casino. So people from both Pinellas County and Hillsborough County would come to the casino here in Oldsmar, right? Is that what it was, or was it just for the citizens of Oldsmar?
There's a meeting, I think the casino
I don't think.
was started by Olds as a real estate place, wasn't it? Where they sold the real estate and then later developed into
Prettyman.
what you're talking about.
Prettyman built.
Prettyman built it?
Yeah.
That would be in 1925 then.
They had a big
Little before.
Boom time, that was,
Yeah.
a whole town to feed the tourists.
that was really something.
I would like to make one suggestion.
They used to have some good barbecues back in those days, didn't
The
they?
book that we're preparing on Northeast Pinellas County, we have ascertained through the county engineer's office the exact latitude and longitude of the traffic light at East Lake Road and the Tampa Road, so that when the newspapers come out, this storm is headed in a direction that will throw it right at this latitude or longitude. I would suggest that we have one for Oldsmar also. So if it deviates a little, the people here can be prepared better that the waters of Tampa Bay will be flushed out of the bay up into some of the low-lying areas. It's just a suggestion, but it will be in our book, the exact latitude and longitude of that particular area for East Lake Woodlands, for instance.
We're not gonna have any more hurricanes in high water.
Well, I think that
I hope you're right.
All over water.
when they had the hurricane, we didn't have the bridges closed down, you see.
Yeah, well, she's right. I
That will
think,
cut off some now if
I
we have one there.
think the causeways and the bridges have cut off a lot of the
Right.
the tidal flow of the
And I think
hurricane.
too that, when they put that causeway, that cut off Oldsmar in a way.
Yeah.
Well,
See?
we got off on that a little while ago.
Yeah.
By why didn't Oldsmar grow?
That's
We got
when
the
it went
land
to
bust
sleep,
and the
yeah.
hurricane. When they put in Davis Causeway,
Right.
that,
D.P. Davis.
yeah,
Actually, the hurricane washed out the long bridge at the head here, which disrupted traffic.
right. Well, probably the hurricane was one of the biggest things that directed the growth of the city another direction because the people was afraid of the hurricane, and of course, but once they put the causeway across, there was no reason for people to have to come around Oldsmar.
There was no way for them to come.
Right, to get into
The
Pinellas.
bridge was gone.
The question is whether or not the causeways and bridges will retard it enough to be effective on up this way.
I don't think so.
On a real
That's
bad hurricane.
A major engineering question.
Yeah.
If it's the center of the storm, it'll come in just like it did before.
It just washed the causeway right out
Yeah.
in a few minutes. If it's a terrific storm like we had in 21.
Well, if you have a storm like you had in 21, you can have your longitudes and your latitudes, and they're going to help. They're going to help.
You better be in Atlanta.
Try to get out of this county.
Well, that time
Well, it can only go so high. I
came
mean,
up 14
you
foot
got
above
it.
normal.
One of the things we've got to work on is an escape route, because a racetrack road is the first thing that goes underwater. And in 21, I swam a horse on the pavement. He couldn't get the paving with his feet in front of the grandstand at the racetrack.
I lived in Oldsmar for 4 years and went to high school, went to 4 different high schools.
Where?
Well, I went to Safety Harbor one year and the long bridge washed out. So we went the rest of the year there, but it took the roof off the school building. And the next year, they put us in the hallway of the elementary school. In the 11th grade, we were bused to Tarpon Springs, and in the 12th grade, I went to Clearwater to the first year that the new school, well, it's,
Clearwater Central High School.
yes.
That's where B and I graduated.
And I did too.
Yeah.
You in Clearwater High?
Can't
Yes.
even find where school was.
What year did you graduate?
33.
All right.
So did I.
We graduated in 33.
33.
33? That's right.
I graduated in 32.
I graduated in 25.
33 I graduated.
27?
Well, I graduated in 32.
What year did we graduate? 33?
33.
From Clearwater High School.
Damn, that wasn't yesterday. It's been a while ago, Al. I hate to think about it.
They,
We'll talk about school.
You know, when you were in high school on the hall, it was on the west side, there was first, second, third, fourth, high school on the hall, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth on the.
No, just up to 6.
Huh?
Just up to the 6.
It was 1, 2, 3,
1, 2,
4,
and
5,
3.
6, and 7, 8, 9, I think.
No, we didn't have the 9 because it was,
I know I had my first 4 years in that one room when we retired.
well, I had my first 3 in that one room. And then I had my 3 in the next room.
He has a picture just to show.
And then I went to Safety Harbor for the 7th, 8th, and 9th. And then I went to Clearwater for the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th.
In 1933, I bought my first piece of land, a Bowl subdivision.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, boy. I owned all of Old's property north of the Tampa Road at one time. Who is this? Is that you? It was not
Weren't you the
developed.
best saddle maker there was around this area? Did you make saddles? Long time ago.
All over the world.
yeah. All right, listen, we got,
You see this?
That was 8th grade, graduated.
That's leather grazed, cattle were grazing in the north part of Oldsmar.
when
Did you
they
have the 2 Brahma bulls that
kept coming in
were with
Oldsmar.
That's the reason Mr. Olds and I didn't get along. And like I tell you, I was an outlaw.
I've always wondered why somebody didn't shoot them.
You have a jet and say no.
You know the girls?
You had these 2 Brahma bulls. They were different colors.
1917, we had an election here, and the south end of Pinellas County, from Tampa Road south, went under the no-fence law. Means if you have a garden, you wouldn't have to fence the livestock out. It's a reverse label for the law. It's an error, really. But it occurred, and the county commissioners got Charles E. Jackson Sr. to build a road from the south end of Lake Tarpon, to build a fence from the south end of Lake Tarpon to the Tampa Road, and follow Tampa Road to the racetrack crossing, then to Hillsborough County, and north to the corner of Pinellas County, northeast corner. That fence was cut in 87 places in one night. The John Oldsmar Bird, the circuit judge of this area, and Roy Booth, the sheriff, my daddy, and I had a meeting. Judge said, Roy, what are we going to do to keep these cattle where they belong? The cattlemen come in here that had cattle from the south end. They were mad, and they took the fence down, wrecked it. My daddy spoke up. He said, Judge, if you will make my son a full deputy at 15 years of age, I will guarantee you that I'll repair that fence that was cut in 87 places, and I'll guarantee you to keep the cattle where they belong. And after that, we began buying the land to pasture our cattle. But that was occurred because some cattle got into St. Petersburg after that law was passed, got on Central Avenue down next to the bay. Some good citizens were going to drive them out and close the gate. He scared them just a little bit too much. They started stampeding. The first opening they could see was a double plate glass window in an occupied restaurant. Now you talk about trouble, but it developed immediately. And we had our job controlling the cattle and the cattlemen of Pinellas County. But I served as a deputy sheriff of Pinellas County for 62 years until this year.
You left here.
I'm no longer a deputy.
Well, I came down in Florida.
I'm just a mean rat.
We just concluded our second taping of the history of Oldsmar with all these fabulous people that we had here. And to speak about the history of Oldsmar, you have to think about the future of Oldsmar. And as we wrap up this taping, I want to introduce to you thousands of people out here that's going to watch this tape in future generations, Bruce Haddock. Bruce is the current city manager of Oldsmar, the best city manager Oldsmar has ever had. Bruce has done a lot for the city, and I'm going to put him on the spot. I'm going to ask him to go ahead and tell us a little bit about himself, but also what he has in his mind for the future of Oldsmar, also the president of Oldsmar. Bruce?
Well, thank you, Jerry. I enjoyed listening to the history this afternoon, and gave me a better appreciation for the city. And of course, it's a pretty big jump over quite a few years. I've been here a little over 5 years, and actually I think Oldsmar has had quite a bit of history just in that short period of time. I like to think that we've improved the services of the city government in just about every area over the last 5 years. And just what I consider some of the major accomplishments: we started the first Parks and Recreation Department. We have taken the original Bank of Oldsmar building and reconstructed that into a library, our Oldsmar Public Library, and of course the new City Hall that we just moved into the end of October this year, and we'll be having our grand opening now in December. There's other improvements that are not as visible to the public, such as our advanced wastewater treatment plant and water system improvements that do a lot to promote the standard of living here in Oldsmar, and things that are taken, I guess, for granted by some, but things such as fire protection and advanced life support and emergency medical services, that all those things that have been initiated in the last 5 years. I think certainly, even as these people who were here this afternoon and even those before them anticipated, Oldsmar had a great future ahead of it, and I think it's more true today than ever before. And what was recognized, I think, in the founding of the city, that we have a geographical location that is our greatest asset probably, and something that no one will ever be able to take away from us.
You got it.
We are at the top of Tampa Bay. We're a great location for any business or anyone who is looking to market their products or services in the Tampa Bay area. If you want to reach Pinellas County, Hillsborough County, Pasco County, this is the place to be. And that's not going to change. We know that's going to be a big selling point right on into the future. I think that some of the recent projects, things that are even under construction right now, such as the Tampa Bay Skating Academy, will have an Olympic-sized ice rink here in the city of Oldsmar. I think that some of the people who were here today would probably get pretty excited about that too. I don't know that all of them even know about that, but that'll be the only Olympic-sized ice rink in the Tampa Bay area. And I think some of the other things that we have to look forward to, of course, we're a city like any other city in Florida that has experienced rapid growth. In the decade of the 80s, we were the 12th fastest growing city in the entire state of Florida in terms of our percentage increase in population. From the 1980 census to the 1990 census, our population increased 212%. And some of those problems are manifest in traffic. That's a big problem for us today. We have 3 state roads in Oldsmar, and we expect that 580 and 584 will both be widened to 6 lanes within the next 5 years. And I think that will be an improvement to stimulate economic development throughout the city. I've sometimes said to people, no matter how great your project is, if you can't get to it, you're going to have a hard time selling it. But I think that the improvements to the state road system will alleviate those problems, and People will want to continue to live in Oldsmar because there'll be employment opportunities nearby, and it will continue to be a great location for many businesses because we are right here in the hub of Tampa Bay.
He said it well. Well, under the leadership of Bruce, and I think this particular council and the leadership of future councils, this will be the city of Pinellas County. And we hope to do more of these tapings on the history of Oldsmar, not only with the older people, but some of the more recent people that was born here and are in their 40s and 50s now. And I want to thank Bruce for what he has done for the city of Oldsmar. And I want to thank TCI for helping us put this on. Thank you.